The air was thick with rain and prayer. Maria knelt beside her son's hospital bed, whispering promises into the sterile quiet, promises that felt heavier than faith itself. The machines hummed like distant hymns, and her fingers clutched the rosary until her knuckles turned white. She had always believed that when she spoke, heaven listened. But tonight, there was only the cold pulse of silence. The priest had said suffering was the language of saints, yet she wondered, if God spoke through pain, why did his voice sound like abandonment? Outside, lightning flared, and in its brief light, she thought she saw Ethan's lips tremble. Or was it just her hope shaping shadows into miracles? Her heart begged for one sound. A breath, a sign, a whisper. But all she heard was the question that burned like fire through her chest. When heaven stays silent, does faith still count as faith? Morning comes with the taste of exhaustion. Maria sits by the bed, her eyes hollow, whispering psalms she barely remembers. Father Gabriel enters quietly, offering coffee and verses about faith, tested through fire. But his words drift like smoke, beautiful, weightless. Maria watches Ethan's chest rise and fall, wondering if he can hear her. Is silence a kind of answer? She asks him, though the only reply is the rhythmic sigh of the ventilator. Dr. Lena enters with new test results, her tone measured, her words carefully arranged to avoid false hope. Maria listens but doesn't truly hear. She's watching a crucifix hanging crooked on the wall. When Lena leaves, Maria straightens it, a small act of defiance against the chaos. "He's still mine," she murmurs, voice steady, as if daring God to contradict her. That night, Maria dreams of water. Ethan stands by a river that glows with light instead of reflection. "Mama," he says softly. "Don't be afraid." She reaches out, but her hand passes through him like mist. When she wakes, the monitors beep louder for a moment. The pattern strange, almost melodic, then settle. Her heart races. "Was that you?" She whispers into the dim room, uncertain who she's speaking to. Maria steps into the chapel at dawn. Candles line the altar, some burned down to nothing. She lights one for Ethan, whispering his name like a vow. The flame flickers, sputters, then dies. She stares at the smoke twisting upward, her lips parting in silent disbelief. The silence feels louder now, heavier. She kneels, clutching her rosary, and whispers, "If this is your test, let me pass." The wind through the chapel doors answers with nothing at all. Days pass like slow echoes. Maria moves through the ward as though underwater, her prayers turning into whispers of habit more than faith. Father Gabriel visits again, his Bible open to words about endurance. He tells her that silence is not the absence of God, but the preparation for his voice. She nods, but inside, something trembles, not in belief, but fatigue. Later, she watches the nurses replace the flowers on Ethan's table, wilting petals falling one by one. "You said to ask, and I would receive," she murmurs to the air. "But how long must a heart keep asking before it breaks?" Dr. Lena enters quietly, offering her routine update. She speaks of charts and neural pathways, but her voice softens when she meets Maria's eyes. "We're not giving up," she says. But Maria notices the slight delay before the words, the doubt hidden beneath professionalism. After Lena leaves, Maria looks at Ethan and whispers. They talk of science as if it were stronger than love. Her voice cracks, breaking on the word, love. She leans closer, touching his hand. "But love doesn't give up." That evening, Maria walks to the chapel again. A single candle burns at the altar, its light trembling. She kneels, whispering every prayer she knows. But the words feel foreign now, rehearsed. The chapel echoes with stillness. Suddenly, the candle flickers, sputtering out. She gasps, striking in a match, but it refuses to light. Once, twice, again. Her hand shakes. "Why?" she whispers. "If you are near, why won't you let me see?" The silence that answers feels almost alive. Outside the chapel, Father Gabriel finds Maria sitting on the floor, her back against the cold wall. He sits beside her silent for a moment, then says, "Even Christ cried out and heard nothing back." She looks at him sharply. "And then he died," she replies, voice flat. "Is that meant to comfort me?" Gabriel lowers his gaze. "Maybe it's meant to remind us that silence is not the end." Maria turns her head toward the chapel door, whispering, "Then why does it feel like it is?" That night, Maria returns to Ethan's room and finds Jacob Ruiz sitting by the bed. Father Gabriel's son, the wandering musician. His guitar rests beside him, strings muted. "He shouldn't be alone," Jacob says. His voice is gentle, unexpected. They sit in silence for a while. Then he asks, "Do you really think miracles still happen?" Maria's eyes flicker to her son. "They have to," she whispers, "because if they don't, then God has forgotten how to love." Jacob looks away, his expression unreadable. The monitors hum softly, their rhythm like a heartbeat that belongs to more than one soul. The night feels endless, soaked in sterile light and the hum of machines. Maria drifts into uneasy sleep beside Ethan's bed. In her dream, she stands at the river again, but this time the water glows brighter, flowing upward into a sky that seems alive. Ethan stands on the opposite bank, smiling softly. "I'm not gone, Mama," he says, voice echoing like wind through glass. "I'm only waiting." She reaches toward him, her fingertips brushing the air, and the world shatters into white. When she wakes, the heart monitor spikes, a sound like a heartbeat returning. Maria gasps, clutching Ethan's hand. The nurses rush in, but she barely hears them. All she can whisper is, "He spoke." Dr. Lena rushes in, her expression flickering between disbelief and relief. "It might have been a neural reaction," she says quickly, checking the readings. But Maria shakes her head. "No, it was him." Father Gabriel arrives moments later, drawn by her cries. Maria recounts the dream, her voice trembling with conviction. Gabriel listens silently, then says, "Sometimes faith dresses itself in dreams to keep us alive." Maria looks at him fiercely. "No, this was real." Maria writes down every word from the dream in her notebook, desperate to capture it before it fades. Jacob watches from the corner, strumming his guitar softly. "Maybe dreams are how we talk to the parts of ourselves we can't face awake," he murmurs. She doesn't look up. "Or maybe they're how God reaches those who still listen." He smiles faintly. "You sound like my father." She pauses, glancing at him. "Then he must be a man who still believes." Jacob's smile fades. "Not anymore." Later that night, Maria sits alone, reading her notebook aloud, each word trembling with faith and longing. Suddenly, the monitor's beeping syncs with her voice, like a heartbeat responding. She stops mid-sentence. The lights flicker. A whisper echoes faintly, distant yet unmistakable. Her name? Drawn out like a sigh. Maria. She freezes, tears spilling silently. "Is that you?" she breathes. The silence after feels alive again, but this time it feels like listening. Morning breaks over the hospital. Maria tells Father Gabriel about the voice, her words spilling with trembling joy. He listens, expression unreadable. "Are you sure it was God?" he asks gently. "Could it be something your heart needs to hear?" She stiffens. "Does it matter?" Gabriel looks at her, eyes full of quiet ache. "It does. Because even truth can wear the face of longing." Maria turns toward the window, sunlight pouring across Ethan's still form. "Then let longing be holy," she whispers. Time becomes cruel in its sameness. The days blur into the same soft hum, the same quiet light. Maria barely eats. The doctors now speak gently, like people choosing words for a grave. We need to discuss long-term decisions, Dr. Lena says, eyes avoiding hers. Maria stares at her son. His stillness, his fragile breath, and something inside her fractures. You talk about decisions, she whispers, but how can a mother decide when heaven won't? She turns away before they see her cry. That night, Father Gabriel returns with news. The hospital board has recommended the withdrawal of life support. He tells her gently, almost apologetically. Mariah's lips tremble. They want me to sign his death. Gabriel tries to reason, his words meant to soothe, but they ignite her instead. You talk of faith, she cries, but where is yours now? The silence between them grows sharp. Finally, Gabriel whispers, sometimes faith means letting go. Maria stares at him as though seeing a stranger. Then I want no part of that kind of faith. Maria storms back to Ethan's room, the echo of her footsteps loud against sterile tile. She falls to her knees beside him, clutching his motionless hand. Don't leave me, she begs. If God won't speak, then you must. Her voice cracks into sobs that have no words. The machines hum, impassive. Jacob appears in the doorway, watching her silently. He wants to comfort her but doesn't move. In her grief, she looks less like a woman praying, and more like one fighting with heaven itself. Later in the hallway, Jacob finds Father Gabriel alone, sitting on a bench. You told her to let go, Jacob says quietly. You once told me the same thing. Gabriel sighs, his voice worn. And I was wrong then too. Jacob sits beside him, rubbing his hands together. Do you still believe? Gabriel looks toward the chapel door, expression unreadable. I'm not sure belief is something you hold, he says softly. Sometimes it's what holds you, even when you don't want it to. At midnight, Maria stands alone in the chapel. Her prayers have turned to shouts, her whispers to cries. You say you love me. Prove it, she screams, her voice echoing through the empty space. Her rosary snaps, beads scattering across the floor like raindrops. She falls to her knees, sobbing, pressing her forehead to the cold marble. If you're still there, she whispers, say something, anything. But there is nothing, only the flicker of the last candle, struggling, refusing to die, and the sound of her own breath breaking the silence. Morning creeps in like a thief, pale and cold. Maria sits by Ethan's bed, eyes dry from too many nights of tears. There is no prayer now, only quiet breathing, the steady rhythm of machines. Dr. Lena enters, her expression heavy. Maria, she says softly, we've reached the point where continuing may only prolong his suffering. The words fall like stones. Maria nods. Numb. Do what you must, she whispers, though her voice sounds far away. For the first time, she doesn't look toward heaven for an answer. She just stares at her son and feels nothing but the emptiness where faith used to live. Later that day, Father Gabriel comes to see her, but she refuses to meet his eyes. Don't tell me this is God's will, she says before he can speak. I've lived my whole life for his will, and this is all he's given me. Gabriel takes a step closer. Sometimes surrender is faith. She shakes her head slowly. No. Surrender is defeat when heaven has gone silent. The priest lowers his gaze, realizing there are no words left to bridge the gulf between them. That night, Maria removes the cross from around her neck and lays it on Ethan's pillow. You keep it, she whispers. Maybe he'll listen to you. She sits in silence, watching the machines, feeling the weight of stillness pressing on her chest. For the first time, she closes her eyes without praying. The world feels quieter, not in peace, but in surrender. And then just before she falls asleep, she hears it again, a whisper. Not gentle, not distant, commanding. Trust the silence. She jolts awake, heart pounding, eyes darting toward her son. But nothing has changed, except the feeling that she is no longer alone in the room. Jacob finds her in the morning, still sitting in the same chair. "You didn't sleep," he says quietly. She shakes her head. He spoke again. She whispers, "Not Ethan. Something else." Jacob studies her face, unsure whether to believe her or be afraid for her. "Maybe your mind is trying to keep you from breaking," he says gently. Mariah's eyes glisten. "Maybe it's God trying to keep me from giving up." The words hang between them, fragile as glass. Neither dares to touch them. At sunset, the decision is made. The machines will be turned off in the morning. Maria walks the hospital halls, numb, like a ghost among the living. She enters the chapel one last time and lights a candle, though her hands tremble so badly it almost falls. "If you are there," she whispers, "don't save him for me, save him for you." The flame steadies, flickering once, then burns tall and bright. Maria stares at it, unable to decide whether it's mercy or madness that she feels. The morning arrives with a quiet too perfect to be real. Maria stands by Ethan's bed as Dr. Lena and the nurses prepare. Father Gabriel waits nearby, holding his Bible closed, not to read, but to keep his trembling hands still. Jacob stands at the doorway, unable to speak. "Are you ready?" Lena asks gently. Maria nods, her voice barely a whisper. "Do it." As the machines power down one by one, the rhythmic beeps fade into silence. Maria closes her eyes. "Into your hands," she breathes, though her heart feels hollow. The silence is unbearable. Maria bends over her son, whispering goodbye through shaking lips. "You can rest now," she says, though her body resists every word. A tear falls onto Ethan's cheek, glistening in the sterile light. The nurses step back, giving her space. Father Gabriel begins a soft prayer, his voice breaking mid-sentence. Then a sound, faint but unmistakable. A single, soft beep. Dr. Lena freezes. Another follows. The heart monitor flickers back to life. "What?" she whispers. Maria opens her eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. "He's breathing," she cries. Chaos erupts. Nurses rush in. Alarms sound again, but this time with life instead of loss. Maria steps back, hands trembling, laughter and tears colliding on her face. Dr. Lena checks Ethan's pulse, her disbelief turning to awe. "This is impossible," she murmurs. "Then believe it," Maria says through her tears. Father Gabriel stands frozen, tears welling as he crosses himself. Jacob lowers his head, whispering something that sounds like a prayer, though no one hears the words. Hours later, the room is calm again. Ethan remains unconscious but stable. Dr. Lena sits quietly, still processing what happened. "There's no medical explanation," she admits. Maria sits beside her son, her face serene yet haunted. "Maybe not everything needs one." She replies softly. Father Gabriel stays silent, watching the candlelight of the afternoon sun spill across the room. He has preached miracles his whole life, yet this one frightens him because heaven still hasn't spoken. That night, Maria cannot sleep. She watches Ethan's face, peaceful under the dim light, his chest rising on its own. "You came back," she whispers, smiling faintly. But then she feels it again. That same presence, silent and heavy, filling the room. Her rosary lies on the table, broken but glinting in the low light. "Was it you?" she asks softly. The silence answers, patient and complete, and in that stillness she feels both peace and fear, as if grace itself has entered the room, wearing the mask of quiet. The dawn light creeps gently through the blinds, washing the room in soft gold. Maria awakens to the quiet rhythm of Ethan's breathing. Steady, strong, real. Her eyes widen as she leans closer. His fingers twitch, then curl around hers. "Ethan?" she whispers, afraid the sound might shatter the moment. His eyelids flutter. Slowly, impossibly, they open. Mama. The single word breaks her open. She sobs, laughter and prayer colliding into one trembling breath. Heaven has spoken, not with thunder, but through the voice she'd been waiting to hear all along. Word spreads through the hospital. Nurses whisper in the halls. Dr. Lena stares at the chart in disbelief, and Father Gabriel stands motionless in the doorway, eyes wet with awe. He's awake, Maria says simply, as if saying hope aloud for the first time in months. Gabriel whispers, "Praise be to God." But even as he speaks, Maria shakes her head softly. "No," she says, her voice trembling. "Don't praise him for answering me. Praise him for trusting me with the silence." Later, Maria sits with Ethan, listening to him speak in a fragile whisper. "I heard you," he says softly. "Through the walls. You cried, but you never stopped talking. It was dark, but your voice was the only thing I could follow." Maria can barely breathe. "Did you see anything?" she asks. He smiles faintly, just light. "It wasn't scary. It was quiet." She brushes his hair back, tears falling again. "Then maybe silence was never empty," she whispers. In the chapel, Father Gabriel kneels alone before the altar. His hands tremble as he closes his Bible. "Forgive me," he whispers, "for mistaking silence for absence." Jacob enters quietly, watching his father with softened eyes. "You were right," he says. "Sometimes faith isn't what we say. It's what survives when we have nothing left to say." Gabriel rises slowly, placing his hand on Jacob's shoulder. "Then maybe we've both been listening the wrong way." The candle beside them flares briefly, as though agreeing. Weeks later, Maria walks through the hospital garden with Ethan beside her, pale but smiling, sunlight warming his face. Birds move through the trees, and the air smells of new rain. She pauses, looking toward the chapel window where her reflection merges with the cross inside. "You were there all along," she murmurs. Ethan tugs her hand. "Who?" She smiles gently. "The one who never answered, because he never left." As they walk away, the bells from the chapel begin to ring, not loud, not triumphant, just steady and true, like the sound of faith rediscovered.